The code is ours. Get out. The chief technology officer sneered. I looked away, knowing that on my way out, I would delete my personal encryption key. At the product launch, the screen would not show the app. It would show a countdown. Stolen property detected. Self-destruct in 3, 2. The chief technology officer would spot me in the crowd, terrified. That was the ending I wrote. But the beginning was 3 years earlier, hunched over a cracked laptop screen, pouring pieces of my damn brain into the core transaction engine. It wasn't just software. It was a testament to sleepless nights, optimized down to the byte. I had personally nursed that platform into existence. The air in our first co-working space, a rented corner that smelled like kombucha and broken dreams, was thick with that sense of proprietary creation. I was Zachary, the back-end architect. My code was the skeleton and the bloodstream of the entire company. Then came Derek Rhodes, the new chief technology officer. He showed up in our Thursday all-hands meeting wearing a Patagonia vest and a $1,200 smartwatch. He couldn't stop adjusting it, as if its flawless finish was more crucial than any line of code. His arrival immediately introduced chaos to our established order. "I'm here to bring structure," he announced, grinning like he had just invented scalable capitalism. Derek spoke only in buzzwords. He would say blockchain as a verb and used "Geo" like it was a personality trait you could acquire by drinking the right kind of smoothie. His pitches were full of synergy, scalability, and user-centric paradigms. He liked talking about low-hanging fruit while completely ignoring the deeply complex, interconnected dependencies that ran the engine. He didn't know how to run a terminal window, but he certainly knew how to work a room. I was instantly repulsed, yet mostly dismissive. Startups go through these phases. Founders get scared, investors push for polish. Suddenly, your hacker crew, the people who actually built the thing, are sidelined for a hoodie-clad talk lineup. I told myself to ignore him. I kept to my corner. I was the back end. I was the back end. I figured my work was too essential to be touched by superficial management. But Derek didn't like corners. He wanted spotlights. He began checking in with me, asking leading questions like, "Do you think we still need legacy authentication logic now that we are pivoting to Oath 2? It wasn't a technical inquiry. It was a poorly disguised quiz, testing my loyalty to what he called old thinking. His focus was not on making the code better, but on making the narrative of the code sound better for the press. Soon, the phrases grew sharper: resource realignment, leaner workflows, and moving redundancies. He was circling the team structure like a wolf in designer sportswear, sniffing for anyone who didn't fit his slick, new product vision. I tried to play nice, giving short, dry technical answers and focusing on the console screen, but I knew the true conflict was brewing. It was the conflict between the integrity of logic and the arrogance of image. The new chief technology officer was not interested in what the code did. He was only interested in who got the credit for having owned it. And he had made it clear he intended that person to be him. The subtle tension soon gave way to the first signs of direct, targeted attack on my role. It began with a red banner. One Monday morning, I ran a script to deploy a staging build, and the terminal returned a sharp, unmistakable message: access denied. I thought it was a temporary glitch. I double-checked ran the script again, and got the same refusal. I messaged Jenna in DevOps. She took a moment to reply, then simply wrote, "Oh, weird. I thought you asked to be removed from the staging rotation." I certainly had not. I felt a cold spike of shock, immediately followed by the realization that someone else had. Look, I am a back-end architect. I appreciate a slow-burn mystery as much as the next caffeine-guzzling developer. But this was different. This was wrong. It was subtle, sharp, and felt like sour milk in your coffee. You know the second it hits. It was a conscious effort to remove me from the hands-on operation of my own system. It wasn't about inefficiency. It was about authority. Later that day, I noticed a strange commit on the repository. The name attached was Connor, a junior engineer I had onboarded the previous year. He had seemingly bypassed my branch approval and now had full access. His commit note read: refactoring legacy modules for clarity. Which modules? My modules. The ones I had documented so meticulously that even a distracted golden retriever could follow them. The act was insulting in its brazenness, suggesting my work was messy and required simplification by Connor. the same junior I had personally mentored. The full magnitude of the threat hit me 2 days later, not on a screen, but on a physical whiteboard. I was walking past the conference room wall, and I stopped cold. The complex system diagram I had meticulously drawn, the one that showed the entire flow of the transaction engine, had been wiped clean and redrawn. The structure was the same, the data flow identical, but one critical area was gone. Where it used to say, in my handwriting, Zachary's encryption layer, there was now a generic box labeled only Secure Core. No initials, no footnote, just vanished. It was an institutional gaslight, the visual representation of my planned erasure. That was the turning point. I wasn't angry yet. Anger requires energy. This was a clinical descent into calculated paranoia. I entered the observation phase. I started logging everything: access changes, commit histories, every Slack deletion, and every suspicious human resources invite. I focused on logic, not emotion. The sinking suspicion was that Derek didn't just want to optimize workflows or bring structure. Maybe he wanted to erase the people who built the damn thing entirely. He was attempting to rewrite history before the big launch spotlight hit. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I had learned early in my career that when an arrogant manager starts setting the stage, it is best to let him. While he was busy deleting my name from whiteboards, I knew the one thing he couldn't delete was the architecture itself. The code, the foundation, still remembered me. I was preparing for the inevitable firing, but I was also preparing to prove that the code, unlike the people he was manipulating, only ever told the truth. I simply waited for the moment when my role became officially redundant, knowing that the real conflict, the fight for authorship, had not yet begun. The corporate machine finally moved, culminating in the scheduled confrontation in the I was halfway through debugging a latency spike in the account mirroring microservice when the calendar invite hit. No subject line, just join, 10 minutes from now. No context, no warning. The kind of thing that makes your spine straighten before your brain catches up. I clicked accept. I didn't close my tabs or pack my meager bag. I just walked. Conference room B had that sad startup vibe, used bean bags, a whiteboard that still listed Q3 objectives and key results from a year ago, and a broken dangling like a noose. Derek was already inside. So was Dana from Human Resources, who always overcompensated with soft smiles right before they were about to shove you off a cliff. Zachary, Dana said, motioning to the chair with the false cheer reserved for bad news. Thanks for making time. I didn't sit. I remained standing, forcing them to look up slightly. Derek cleared his throat. He had a beige folder open, thick with paper, not digital. He must have thought it made him look more prepared, more serious. We have been reviewing the team's current structure as we prepare for the launch. Derek began, his voice practiced and smooth. And after careful analysis of our forward-looking resource needs and upcoming shifts in our go-to-market strategy, we have made a decision. You are letting me go. I finished for him, the words flat and lacking any surprise. I had been waiting for weeks for this moment. Dana blinked once, her soft smile faltering only slightly. Well, we prefer to say the role has been made redundant in light of upcoming shifts. I kept my gaze fixed on Derek. He was the author of this redundancy. You do not even know what my role is. He didn't flinch. Your code is excellent. It really is. But we need someone more agile, someone who aligns with the new product vision. You tend to overbuild, Zachary. And honestly, you have become hard to work with. That last line landed precisely as intended, a catch-all term designed to dismiss expertise as a personality flaw. Hard to work with. It was the corporate term for refuses to act impressed by incompetence. I just asked one thing, the only thing that truly mattered. My voice was low, surgical. So you are sure the code belongs to you now? Derek leaned back, his smirk calibrated to maximum technological smugness. All intellectual property created on company time is company property, Zachary. The code is ours. Get out, I smiled. Genuinely, it was the first time in weeks I had felt anything other than quiet dread, and the relief of finality was immense. Dana handed me a generic full of healthcare rollover information and exit checklists. I ignored the paper. I simply turned and walked out, calm and quiet, like a doctor leaving an operating room after calling time of death. My laptop was still open when I reached my desk. No one had touched it. The terminal was blinking, the session still live, waiting for my command. I sat down, ran a final script, and deleted my private encryption key. It was not stored anywhere else. No copy, no backup, not even in a cold wallet. That key was the only bridge between their application and the license validation module, buried deep in the backend like a landmine. Without it, everything would look functional until the precise moment it needed that handshake. The ignition was still there, but the key was gone. Then I opened one more script, something I had written months ago in a moment of dark foresight. Trigger Sentinel initiate end equals production. The command returned one short line: auto trigger protocol armed. That was it. No alarms, no flashing lights, just a quiet contract with future chaos. They thought they had locked me out. They did not know I had just locked them in. I shut the laptop, left it on the desk, and walked out of the office for the last time. Now officially an outsider, I had the freedom to turn my defensive instincts into an unassailable trap within the system I knew intimately. My first act was to check in with the only other person I knew Derek had targeted: UX/UI lead. She had taste. She always had. Marissa was the reason our app felt effortless and intuitive. She hated unnecessary scroll bars the way some people hated war crimes. Derek, of course, had pushed her out, saying her designs lacked virality, meaning she didn't make the buttons big enough for his thumb. We met at a quiet coffee shop, the sound of an anonymous podcast recording humming softly in the background. Her sunglasses were too large for her face, and her expression was too tired for her age. He rewrote the design layer in Bootstrap. She muttered, stabbing her straw through her iced coffee. I checked the latest commit. It looks like a WordPress theme from 2012. I winced, a genuine, physical reaction to the desecration of elegant code. I heard he is pitching it as minimalist now, I offered. She snorted. Minimalist, or just bankrupt? You planning to burn the place down, Zachary? I shrugged, looking out the window. Already lit the match. We didn't talk about the firing directly or the key deletion. We didn't need to. There is a language shared by the exiled, the ones who build things only to be pushed out the moment venture capitalists smell an initial public offering. Marissa just raised her cup in a silent toast of grim understanding. Back in the quiet sanctity of my apartment, I focused. I was no longer an employee, but that only meant my access was now invisible, not non-existent. My final, logical revenge had to be subtle, untraceable, and legally immaculate. It couldn't be malware or a virus. It had to be a pure function of the code's immutable logic. The license validation system I had written months ago had a heartbeat. It called home every time the application booted: development, staging, and production. In development and staging, it bypassed validation with a dummy handshake. But production was different. It usually required a timestamp token generated by my personal encryption key, the same key I had just permanently destroyed. I opened the backend module and began typing, my fingers gliding over the keys like a surgeon's scalpel. Hours passed. No shortcuts, no comments, just cold logic. I built a subroutine and disguised it inside the license wrapper, tucked into a rarely touched branch of code handling version mismatches. I named it as Sentinel. The logic for Sentinel was simple and elegant. This was crucial. It had to wait long enough for the to load and for Derek to believe the launch was successful. Then it would lock the main database, freeze all active session states, and overwrite them with a single message pulled from a hard-coded string. I called the function stolen property detected, self-destruct initiated. It wouldn't destroy any user data. It wouldn't steal anything. It simply stopped the show loudly and permanently until the missing key was provided, which was impossible. I wasn't hiding the code, I was burying it. It was open, clean, and perfectly camouflaged in the complexity, obscured by function names that sounded like they handled analytics or regulatory compliance checks. No one on Derek's team would dare touch what looked like a benign, dead piece of legacy logic, so close to launch. I ran the final sandbox test 3 times. In development mode, the app waved me through. In staging, it smiled. But in production mode, without my key, the countdown began. The database sealed itself like an airlock. I logged out and meticulously deleted every trace of my local login history. The trap was not malicious, it was justice. It was a quiet correction for arrogance, for intellectual theft, and for pretending you could cut the engine out of the car and still expect it to drive. The keys were gone. The moment they tried to start it, the system would refuse. The trap was armed. With the trap set, I could only watch from my apartment as Derek took center stage, building a castle on my foundation. Derek's face was suddenly everywhere. He was linked in news carousels, his tight fade and practiced smirk gracing countless podcast thumbnails and banner ads in subway stations. The future of secure transactions, he declared to one host, perched in a studio that looked like it had been furnished entirely by a crypto influencer with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. We rebuilt the architecture from the ground up. Clean, scalable, totally bulletproof. I was sauteing onions in my kitchen when he said that. I laughed out loud, a sharp, bitter sound that made me burn the onions. I didn't even care. He said, "We," but he meant I. By the time he hit bulletproof, I half expected him to claim he wrote the entire backend in Morse code using a soldering iron and sheer grit. The host, clearly clueless, nodded sagely and declared, "That's what real vision looks like," as if Derek had just revealed fire to a cave full of idiots. The press kits followed slick videos with glowing, animated data flows, fake dashboards, and graphics that did not match the actual. TechCrunch ran a feature calling the new application the Stripe Killer. Wired used the phrase, disruptive genius. Some lifestyle blog even dubbed Derek the Steve Jobs of fintech. The bottle of red wine in my kitchen definitely got lighter that week. It was surreal, watching a narrative take shape that was entirely predicated on a lie. I was not the only one noticing the absurdity. The investors, however, were drooling. Series B funding landed overnight. Venture capital firms with names like Iron Scale and Nimbus Partners started tweeting about the app's revolutionary platform. Someone put up a massive digital billboard in Silicon Valley, just a black background, the company's neon logo, and a countdown clock ticking toward launch day. The irony was heavy enough to collapse the entire digital billboard. The clock was ticking for them too. They just did not know it yet. From my little apartment, surrounded by houseplants I mostly forgot to water, I watched it all unfold like a terrible movie I had already spoiled for myself. The anger was gone, replaced by a quiet, detached amusement. I was watching a fool in a horror movie walk into the dark basement with only a butter knife for defense. They had taken everything. The credit, the spotlight, the illusion of control, but they had not taken the system. The system still recognized me. More accurately, it refused to function without the digital signature of my key. I knew that a technical failure, even a catastrophic one, could be spun as a hiccup or an external attack. But I wanted the failure to be undeniably internal, a judgment rendered by the code itself. That's when I wrote the email. Simple, anonymous. No signature, no flowery technical threats, just a single line. I sent it to a personal email address I had kept from a senior board member, a man who had once told me, "You are the only one here I would trust with my bank account." I typed, "Watch your app on launch day." No flourish, no threat, just a nudge, a flicker of a match in a room soaked in gasoline. Then I bought a ticket to the launch. Not a backstage pass or a press credential, just a standard seat in the crowd. I paid full price. I needed to see the moment when the code spoke the truth to power. Let them think I was gone. Let Derek believe his kingdom was rising. He never looked up to see the cracks in the foundation, because he was too busy admiring the spotlight. I didn't need to lift another finger. The trap was in place. The script was loaded. The countdown had already started. And I had the best seat in the house. The night before the launch, the polished facade of the office was cracking, and I could hear the desperate whispers from a distance. The hours leading up to the launch always smell the samey stress, burned coffee, dry erase markers, and the stale scent of unwashed ambition. From the outside, the office windows in Silicon Valley glowed late, filled with silhouettes huddled around screens. The giant digital countdown ticked below 12 hours. But inside the repository, my remote watchers started buzzing mid-afternoon, confirming my anticipation. Chaos had arrived. A junior engineer, I recognized the IP address as Ravi's, was frantically commenting and uncommenting blocks of JSON code in the deployment configuration, trying to get something to pass final validation checks. He wasn't alone. 2 more commits landed back to back, both labeled temp fix, and both were rolled back within minutes. The anomaly was the production build rejecting the license handshake. My Sentinel trap was active, cleanly and quietly refusing to proceed. Yet the system looked stable enough to proceed, which was the point. They still hadn't touched the trigger sequence itself. It was too buried, too camouflaged, designed to look exactly like a dead legacy hook from an old compliance framework. It was something no engineer under pressure would dare touch this close to launch. Engineers under pressure only lift what is labeled urgent. Real dangers hide under the things they think they already understand. I watched a Slack thread begin to form. One of the interns, clearly sharper than his title suggested, flagged the core issue. "This module keeps calling a null handshake loop," he wrote. "Should we investigate before launch?" The thread died instantly. Derek replied with a single, arrogant message. "Ignore it. We don't need her. She was slow and overcomplicated everything." Slow. That was rich, coming from a man who thought Git was merely a productivity application. I smiled, not from anger, but from a cold, certain vindication. Derek was about to learn what overcomplicated really meant when the entire engine decided to quit on his stage. His arrogance was the final, perfect trigger. He was stepping into the trap with his eyes closed. I ran one final test in my sandbox environment. I triggered the production handshake without my key for the last time. 3, 2, 1, lockout. Data freeze. Message flashed, stolen property detected. The purge was clean. There was no rollback, no debug logs, just a cold stop. The key remained deleted, irrecoverable. I poured a glass of water, turned off my monitor, and for the first time in months I slept. No anxiety, no dreams, just the rest of a coder who had achieved logical perfection. But I wasn't the only one up. At 1:17 a.m., my watcher logged a new access attempt. Derek. He was poking around the backend himself now, clearly trying to identify the source of the handshake failure. He ran a grep command for validation, found the module, and spent 26 minutes inside the file. He didn't understand the logic, didn't touch the Sentinel code, but he wanted to mark his territory. He added one small, dismissive comment at the top, "Fan to be refactored post-launch." When he hit save, the system threw a minor warning. He ignored it and attempted to deploy a hotfix, which failed badly. The continuous integration server threw a tantrum. Derek deleted the thread from Slack before anyone on the team could reply. The team never saw the alert, but I did. From my end, everything was perfect. The play was set, the actors in place, and in just a few hours, the curtain would rise. One performance only. The central conflict was moments from being violently resolved. I bought a ticket and walked into the cathedral of tech hype, ready to witness the code speak its truth. The venue was a polished, over-engineered tech cathedral in downtown San Francisco, a converted factory with ironic Edison bulbs and exposed brick. The minimalist stage design screamed that the budget had been blown entirely on marketing and ego. Rows of white chairs were filled with people who smelled like venture capital. Everyone was overdressed and overconfident, holding artisan lats and limited edition conference badges like they were golden tickets to a smarter, sleeker future. And there, at the back, near the sound booth where no one important ever looks, sat me. Plain black dress shirt, no name tag, no +1. Just a front row seat to my own quiet apocalypse. Derek strutted out 15 minutes late, because of course he did. He wore all black, a poor Steve Jobs cosplay with much worse posture, pacing with a wireless microphone clipped to his collar and that same rehearsed smirk. Cameras flashed, phones filmed, and the live stream counter ticked well into 6 digits. "Good morning, innovators." He began, his voice oozing Fox humility. "Today is not just a product launch. It is the beginning of a revolution in secure transactions." I tilted my head slightly. There it was, secure. He loved that word, tossed it around like seasoning, even though he had no idea what it meant under the hood. Security wasn't a feature. It was the skeleton, the bloodstream, the thing that bloods silently when you cut it wrong. He clicked the remote. A glowing slide appeared behind him, filled with animated flows and fake user metrics. Logos scrolled by partners, early adopters, media mentions, each one a lie stacked atop a stolen blueprint. The audience was hooked. I scanned the room, venture capital representative, influencers live streaming, and the original glassy-eyed founders sitting off to the side, their souls long since cashed out. Derek launched into the demo, holding up a tablet that was supposedly running the app live in production. The crowd leaned forward. The camera zoomed in. He tapped the screen. Nothing happened. Not yet. The app loaded perfectly. The user interface glowed. The buttons worked. The system had rules, checks, and timers. The license validation component, running in the background, was waiting for the perfect moment. It had to wait just long enough for the audience and the investors to be absolutely sure that the launch was a success. Derek turned to the crowd, his confidence swelling. When we started this journey, he lied smoothly. I knew we needed a backend that was scalable, modular, and self-healing. We built one from scratch. I stopped hearing his words. My pulse was steady. I was not angry, nor was there any adrenaline, just quiet, clinical observation. I watched his hands, his face, and the lines at the corners of his eyes twitching between rehearsed confidence and a creeping, subconscious doubt. He tapped the screen again, triggering a sample transaction. Still nothing. The app processed the fake payment. The user interface cheered. Applause broke out. Journalists typed faster. One influencer whispered into her phone, "It's actually working." I waited. The lockout was never supposed to hit instantly. It waited for one thing, one real interaction, one genuine, verified user session in production, absent the key. That's when the Sentinel timer would begin. That's when the mask would peel off. That's when Derek's practiced smile would crack. He tapped the screen again, starting a new session. Something shifted. Not loud, not obvious, but soft. A flicker. The app didn't respond the way it had in rehearsals. The screen stuttered, then dimmed. For a heartbeat, it just hung there, like the system itself was holding its breath, and then it went black. The massive display lit up with a stark, unsettling red font on a matte black void. Stolen property detected. Self-destruct initiated. Then came the countdown, clear and digital. 3. A ripple of confusion surged through the audience. Phones came up. A woman in the front row gasped, dropping her branded water bottle. 2. A cascading sequence of terminal-level commands executed in the background. The user interface collapsed into a system-wide lockdown interface with a final message. Unauthorized launch protocol detected. Source license missing. Shutdown complete. In the crowd, someone whispered, "What the hell is this?" Derek's microphone picked up a sharp inhale, but no words came out. His hands hovered above the tablet like it had turned into an explosive device. He tapped again. Nothing. He swiped nothing. He turned toward the stage crew, his eyes wide. "Cut the feed." He hissed, but it was too late. The live stream had already caught it. A reporter near the front stood up, phone camera fixed on Derek. "Is this a cyber-security failure?" she asked Liv, her voice cutting through the tension. Was the app compromised? Then he looked up. He saw me sitting near the back, legs crossed, arms folded. My expression was calm, still surgical. I didn't smirk, didn't flinch, didn't blink. I just held his gaze. He froze. Every drop of color drained from his face. He looked like a child who just realized the stove was still hot. A man beside him, one of the junior engineers who had been promoted too fast, leaned in and whispered, audible enough for the mics to catch. "She did this, didn't she?" Derek couldn't answer, because that was the moment he realized what I had built was never just code. It was a verdict. He hadn't just stolen software. He had stolen authorship, integrity, and credit. And now, with every camera pointed at his sweating face, every investor watching in horror, the system had responded. Not with a lawsuit, not with a hacker, but with logic. Cold, elegant, immutable. I stood, not rushed, not dramatic. I simply rose from my chair and turned toward the exit, leaving Derek Rhodes marooned on the stage of his public failure. I had confronted the betrayal, not with anger, but with the inevitable truth coded into the engine itself. Leaving the venue, I left the shame and chaos behind, knowing the logic had already won the war. The street outside smelled like burnt espresso and corporate shame. Clusters of people stood frozen on the sidewalk, phones in hand, scrolling through live reactions to the onstage meltdown they had just witnessed. One guy muttered into his AirPods, "Yeah, cancel the wire. Just pull it. All of it." The venue was bleeding executives, venture capital representatives bolting toward black sport utility vehicles with zero patience. My phone buzzed, unknown number, but I knew who it was. The message read, "Holy. They are saying you broke it." I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back, "No. I protected my work. They broke the law." No emoji, no follow-up, just the truth. Derek didn't fail because of sabotage. He failed because he thought ownership came from signatures on offer letters and nice blazers, forgetting that systems have memory, and the one I built remembered everything. By evening, the launch was being dubbed the tech implosion of Q4. On social media, an influencer posted a slow motion video of the red screen moment with dramatic music layered over it. The hashtag stolen property detected trended for the next day. Internal leaks hit Reddit, with anonymous developers posting about weeks of ignored warnings. A few sharp eyes on Hacker News even managed to connect the dots to the license handler code, just enough to confirm the story, but not enough to reverse engineer what I had done. 3 days later, the board fired Derek, quietly of course, with a sanitized press statement about leadership realignment and refocusing on long-term goals. By day 4, the application was pulled from all stores. All demo servers were shut down. The company homepage now read, "We are undergoing maintenance to bring you a better experience." And day 5 started with an email. It was from the chief technology officer at a competing, highly respected firm, someone who had seen the entire meltdown and apparently loved a good underdog power play. "We are looking to rebuild our infrastructure from the ground up," she wrote privately. "On your terms." I marked the email unread. I wasn't in a rush. Instead, I walked to my favorite coffee shop, the one with the flickering Edison bulb, and took my usual seat by the window. I opened my laptop, the same one they hadn't even asked me to return, the one that still carried traces of the early builds, the midnight test logs, and the first version of the encryption layer. I updated my resume, scrolling down to the bottom, and typed in my most recent project under my old title. Then I sipped my coffee and hit save. The revenge wasn't fire, it wasn't fury. It was just the truth, written in cold, elegant code. A reminder that some things cannot be stolen, only imitated badly by people who confuse appearances for structure and buzzwords for blueprints. The conflict was over. I had found validation, not from Derek's approval, but from the immutable logic of my creation. I never heard from Derek again, and that was the real win.